The process that has been set up here in Georgia can be really called a role model process for many other countries. We wanted to set up a process that would be open, transparent, and inclusive. And often people say these words, but it doesn't really mean anything but hot air. But if you look at the way that this culture policy or culture strategy process have been set up now and what has been happening, this is truly open and inclusive process. I said 2,000 people have been involved already from the region, from different sectors. I personally have met with hundreds of people from organizations, from institutions, from NGOs, etc. So we have now collected through this process hundreds and hundreds of pages of materials, which is the basis for the next phase. So what we're doing at the moment is to analyzing that material and making the first draft of the cultural strategy, which would kind of prioritize what Georgia needs to be doing in its culture sector for the next 10 years. When this is done, this material, this draft, will be sent back to the sectors, will be sent back to the organizations and regions for people to read it, comment, and make additional suggestions on what needs to be rewritten or what needs to be added or what works very well. Culture policy is not something that only stays in the Ministry of Culture. That's very important. In many countries, especially in the Eastern European countries, the understanding is like this. What is culture? What the definition of culture? Culture is only those areas that are being dealt with the Ministry of Culture. And that is so utterly wrong. Culture is firstly in many other areas as well, like media. It is so much interrelated to a number of other policy areas. Culture can contribute to business and trade and export and economy. So it is very much also an issue for the Ministry of Economy. It is very important for the regional and local development, urban and rural development, the policies of agriculture and tourism, very understandable, hopefully. It is about foreign affairs. It's about cultural diplomacy and public diplomacy and building the image of Georgia across the world. So that's why we hope to take this document to the government level, and with a government approval, this is going to be a guiding document not only for the Ministry of Culture, but for all the ministries across the government. I think Europe and the world only wins from the rich exchange of cultural practices. So it's not about what one wins from another, but it's about what both sides win from this normal, healthy exchange of cultural practices. I mean, it's not that what Europe wins from Georgia, but Georgia is Europe. So much of the cultural heritage that defines what Europe is based here in Georgia, with its extremely rich cultural heritage, which is living cultural arena, with its musicians, with its music traditions, with its up-and-coming film industry, with its young, new up-and-coming designers or architects, etc. I think this is a natural bond, and it has maybe been lost for some times, so it needs to be not reinvented but refound. And I think Europe welcomes Georgian culture very much into the culture family, and I think that the inclusion of and accession of Georgia to Creative Europe program only supports that. What is culture and what is not culture? So this scope needs to be broadened. We talk about not only classical parts of culture, not only opera and theaters, and they're very important, but they're not the only ones. We talk also about youth art, we talk about street art, we talk about dance, and we talk about circus, or we talk about the whole range of media arts and new digital arts, for example. So we talk about a number of issues that are really relevant for the contemporary culture policy from UK to Sweden, from France to Germany, and needs to be discussed here in Georgia as well. So, in short, the content needs to be from this country. Only you are the experts of what needs to be done. Only you can set the priorities. And I've said throughout this process that my role as an international consultant here has always been to advise on the methodologies and the process and the structures. Well, there are many opportunities and many strengths in Georgia when it comes to culture, but you are right. I mean, there are many weaknesses and many problems that need to be overcome. And some of these problems are maybe too big to overcome in the next 10 years, so it takes a lot of time. To be very honest, it's very difficult to kind of jump over your shadow with your classical arts. I mean, with the world being full of fantastic theaters and operas and classic, music and films. So you need your niches. You need to show that it's not a museum country. It is a living culture country which produces something new, exciting that people want to see. And there is a potential here, but it needs some awareness. It needs to be part of education. So that is the first thing. Second, I think I mentioned education. Education is a big issue. Even if you just simply look at the education on the university levels, I mean, on a classical sense, it's very good quality. I mean, the ex-Soviet education system prepared very strong, factual-based knowledge. No problem with that. But when you think about the applications of that education, it's very weak. If you look at how well are, for example, the creative professionals that come out of the universities, how well are they prepared to be working in these contemporary conditions? How good are their skills, marketing skills, or business skills, or exporting skills, etc.? It's very low. It's very, very low. Then, of course, these critical issues, funding. I mean, funding for culture is very little, and I mean, government knows about it. It's not a secret. Also, it is very important to notice that the salaries are very, very low, and that is really demotivating. When we look at the working conditions, when we look at the infrastructure, for example, this is not always it's often in a bad quality. And not only the working conditions of the workers, the people, but also the ways that we can attract audiences, for example, or the way that we protect our heritage objects. So the quality of the storage rooms, and the question if these storage rooms help us to protect or preserve the heritage for generations to come. So these are the number of questions that need to be dealt with. And I think that one of the critical issues, which will be on one of the top priorities in the draft culture strategy, is a question about accessibility. Something that probably is not really looked at very often. So when we talk about accessibility, we looked at firstly about, what about the people with special needs? Can they get to culture? Either with disabilities or young people, old people, how are they involved practically in cultural life? I've always said that the easiest way to write a culture policy is to have 2 to 3 people, close them in one room, give them 1 week, and they write a fantastic strategy. It's not going to be authentic, it's not going to be accepted, it's not going to have a mandate or legitimacy. We took a hard way, not the easy way, hard way. All these months of these 2,000 people, discussions, hundreds of pages. We have now hundreds of pages that we need to work through, etc. It's not easy. It's not easy. So, of course, there will be a lot of skepticism in the first. There are probably going to be a lot of searching for, where is my field? Where am I mentioned? All these kind of expectations. But if the people, through the help of the journalists as well, understand that this is now the second stage where they can actually start giving in from their own part, you need to know how to compromise. No one will be completely happy. I mean, government will not be completely happy, creative people not be completely happy, but that's the beauty of it, that everybody makes a step back to get to the common agreement. So I hope that this is going to happen here as well, but maybe I'm naive, who knows.